All right. Sweet. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today for our June CISMA call. I feel like every month I think this, that I can't believe it's time for our CISMA call already. And that stands true this month. So welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and remind everyone that for the duration of the call, I'm going to ask that we keep our microphones muted. I will mute you if you're making noise because I don't want to interrupt our presentation. There will be a Q&A session at the end of our call, so just stay tuned. If in the course of our presentation today you have a question, feel free to drop that question in the chat, and we can get to it at the end. Or you can hold your question, and at the end of the presentation, when we kick off the Q&A session, you can ask your question at that point. So just some quick housekeeping. Welcome to the June CISMA call. I'm going to touch on this later at the end, but we are getting towards the end of our 2026 programming, which means that I am going to be asking you all for ideas for 2027 programming. So look back at the calls, think about the topics that we've covered, think about topics that you'd like to see covered next year, and please reach out to us and let us know so that we can start organizing a slate of speakers and just putting together the programming for next year. Why is this not progressing? There we go. Alrighty, so today I'm very happy to say that we have David Lingenfelser with FWC's Non-Native Fish and Wildlife Program here to give our presentation today. He's going to be giving us some updates on different wildlife EDRR programs that he's been working on. After he gives his presentation, like I mentioned, we'll do our Q&A, and then at the end of the presentation today, I will give some general FISPAC and CISMA updates, which I don't think there's a whole lot. As we get into summer, things are kind of slowing down a little bit. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to David. If you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, sure. Let me open that up. One second.
No problem. Here we go.
All right. Can everyone see this screen here?
Looks good.
All right. So, yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here today, everybody. My name is David Lingenfelser. I'm the senior non-native biologist here in the Fort Myers office. I'm with Florida Fish and Wildlife. And today I'm going to be talking about emerging early detection rapid response. So EDRRs, as I'm sure everyone here is familiar with that acronym. So yeah, I'm going to mostly be talking about the more recent types of high priority animals that we've been dealing with here at FWC. So we've had over the past 100 years or so, there's approximately 198,000 observations of non-native fish and wildlife. Here's a map of that, and as you can see, it's quite overwhelming. The entire state of Florida is full of these observations. There's been over 600 separate species reported to us. Now, of course, not all of those 600 species are established, but this map here just kind of shows you the broad swath of observations that are being made and reported to us, and also shows the importance of having some kind of system where we can respond to them. So here, as a government agency, we can use a number of tools to combat invasive species. Here's a few of them. Of course, we have early detection rapid response that focuses on trying to identify and respond to high priority invasive species before they become established. As a government agency, we also utilize rules and regulations We have some control and management for species that are already established to prevent their further spread. We fund a lot of research, and we also do quite a bit of education and outreach. And these kind of all overlap to some degree, but today I'm going to be mostly focused on this early detection, rapid response part up here on the top there. Um, yeah, so when it comes to responding to non-native animal reports, we need to prioritize which type of reports to respond to. So, for example, on any given day, we might receive many calls to our hotline about, reports of invasive animals, but we only have a limited amount of staff and resources that we can utilize to physically go out and try and remove these animals. So we have to um, prioritize and have some kind of criteria for what warrants a rapid response. And here's some of those categories of criteria. So what we do is a lot of work with reptiles. Our three biggest categories of high priority reptiles would be tegus, monitor lizards, and also large constrictor snakes. Um, and then we also we also will prioritize non-native animals that are not already currently established in Florida, as well as high-risk animals that are seen outside of their established ranges. So, for example, there's some high-risk animals that are currently confined to certain established populations, but we don't want them spreading farther. And then also we prioritize non-native wildlife that's posing an imminent risk to human safety. So for this category here, we'll usually um, get help from our captive wildlife law enforcement to respond to something like that. And when we respond to these high priority incidents, we use a network of staff and volunteers and partners. And this map here shows what that network looks like. You can see there's a mix of everyone, but we particularly rely on those green squares there in the map. Those are our volunteers, and really anyone from the public can become a volunteer as long as they have some kind of general understanding of biology and an interest in removing invasive species. And we're always looking for new volunteers. So if you yourself or if you know anyone who's interested in becoming an EDRR volunteer to remove or respond to reports of invasive animals as they occur, please let me know. The last slide of this presentation has my contact information. Feel free to reach out at any time. So I'm going to spend a lot of this presentation talking about tegu lizards. Um, yeah, they've been a big problem for us. So as of the year 2021, they've been listed on the Florida prohibited species list. This means that they cannot be kept as a personal pet any longer. For ones that were kept as pets before 2021, there was an opportunity for pet owners to have them grandfathered in to continue keeping them as pets, but they would have had to be uh, pit tagged, and also they would have needed a permit to be issued. So tegus are omnivores, but they're particularly fond of eggs. And so for that reason, they're a big threat to our native ground nesting birds in particular. They are tolerant to cold weather. They naturally go through a period of brumation that lasts from about October through February, kind of similar to hibernation, where they're mostly burrowed underground during that time. They're native to Argentina, which is pretty far south in the southern hemisphere, and it also gets cold during their winter time. So they can pretty much tolerate any of the climate conditions throughout the state of Florida. Uh, there's currently four established populations in Florida. I have here in the yellow circles those four populations, um, as well as all of the observations of tegus that were verified from the years 2024 to currently. And as you can see, they're quite spread out pretty far. Most of these observations outside of the established areas are likely just pet releases or escapes. Um, they so yeah, they are still quite popular to be kept as pets, despite being on the prohibited list. We frequently respond to reports of pet tegus. You can tell they're pets because they're usually tame. To date, we've not had any that were pit tagged that we retrieved, so that would indicate that there's still a lot of people keeping them illegally without a permit. But I wanted to highlight these two areas in particular. In the orange squares, we have the East Orlando area in Orange County, and then also in Brevard County, a little bit to the east of there. That's kind of a new area. Those are two new areas of concern that I'll talk about in a few moments that we're closely watching. Um, when you take a look at tegus compared to some of the other invasive species, such as like iguanas or Burmese pythons that have been established in Florida for many decades, the tegus are more recent. So the first population was established in Hillsborough in the early 2000s, then Homestead shortly after, and more recently, after 2010, we had another population here in Charlotte County, and then shortly after that in Fort Pierce. So, if you take a look at where the tegus are established compared to where they're not established, there's a great deal of potential expansion, and for that reason, they're a high priority invasive species for us to try and respond to and control from further distribution. So focusing in on the Orange County area here, we've received an uptick in reports from about 2021 to 2026. So is about the past 5 years or so, but in particular, the past really 2 or 3 years is when we've had the most reports. This map here shows the confirmed reports from since 2024. Um, and as of last year, we now have a network of volunteers through the University of Central Florida that we have to respond to reports of tegus in this area. As of June 18th, the the Orlando volunteers up there have responded to a total of 14 tegu reports, and that resulted in 8 captures and 4 carcasses being recovered. None of these tegus were pit tagged, and just this year, there's been at least 2 juvenile tegus removed. Actually, that number is, I believe, up to 3 now. Or no, actually 4. We've had three in the East Orlando area and one in Christmas. The most recent was just today, actually. So yeah, the juveniles indicate that there could be some breed. They were not hatchlings, so we're not 100% sure if they're breeding yet. But yeah, when we get reports of juveniles and then especially hatchlings, that's an indication of a breeding population, especially if we get multiple reports. Um, So, in addition to responding to reports of tegus through our hotline, we also, or the volunteers up there have also been deploying trail cameras that are baited with chicken eggs to try to monitor for tegus in natural areas. This diagram here on the bottom left kind of shows a setup of a trail camera. So we have the camera here on the left, and then a bait box tied to a tree or a post, not too far away with an egg in it. So the idea here is if a tegu crosses this path in between the camera and the egg, the motion sensor camera will take a picture of it, and then we can confirm whether tegus exist at that natural area. And in addition to that, this year they're going to be setting up some trail cameras at sentinel chicken coops. So sentinel chickens are chicken coops that are run at a county level. They're in place to monitor for mosquito-borne diseases. Usually, blood samples are taken from these chicken coops um, regularly, and they're in strategically set up randomly through both natural and residential areas. But the map on the right here shows again those purple tegu observations, and then the yellow stars there are where the sentinel chicken coops are in Orange County. So we're going to try and get some cameras set up there to see if those chickens lure the tegus to them. Then moving farther east into Brevard County, another concerning uptick in reports of tegus from over the past 5 years. This map here shows confirmed tegu reports since 2024. There's a wide spatial distribution of these reports. As you can see, there's several different kind of pockets. One those has been just east of Lake Poinsett, but you can see they're quite spatially distributed. So it's unclear at this point how they're dispersing. We don't know if they're intentionally being spread, or if they're just hitchhiking on vehicles, or if they're dispersing naturally somehow. It's hard to tell at this point. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of volunteers that respond to tegus, that are able to respond to tegus in this area. When they do respond, usually we try to do trap loans to homeowners that report them. But only five of these tegu reports have resulted in captures over the past 2 years. But we do have some more outreach planned in later of July of this year to try and recruit some more volunteers. And in addition to that, we've also had an iHeart Media campaign to try and raise public awareness for tegus in both Orange and Brevard counties, and really throughout the state. We've had a few different components or a few different specific campaigns. So one was a blanket statewide awareness of tegus using Meta, which is a social media platform that covers both a number of entities, including Facebook and Instagram. And then a second campaign was targeted measuring to homeowners, adults, anyone living in the counties of Brevard and Orange, and also another special focus on anyone raising poultry in those counties, and the neighboring counties as well. So this is, yeah, you can see this is some of the screenshots of that social media campaign. And in addition, we've also are in the process of a third campaign that's targeting commercial drivers to raise awareness of accidental dispersion of invasive species through the transportation of goods, which is another mode of introduction. In addition to those hotspots, there's been a few other reports of them that are somewhat concerning. We had a few reports in the Ocala region. Um, there were two reports that were adjacent to the Ross Prairie WMA, which is over in this area, and a few other scattered reports. But these are so far most likely separate pet escapes or releases. There's no indication of a breeding population present during this time in that location. And then also another area that we're looking at is in the Florida Keys. So they're not yet established in the Florida Keys, although they are established just nearby in Homestead area, as you can see from these purple dots here. But there's a lot of sensitive native habitat, especially in the northern Keys here. So we've had a few reports of them making them down this way, most likely an expansion of the homestead population. But that's another area where we're keeping a close lookout for. Okay, so moving on to Burmese python. So everyone is probably familiar with them in the Everglades and South Florida. There's a relatively new established population of them now in the Charlotte County area in Southwest Florida. Um, as of the so we first the first report that we received was back in 2015, and since then there's been 68 verified reports of Burmese pythons in this area um, as of this month. Um, Out of those 68 reports, 51 of them were captures. And there's been 27 verified reports just since 2025 alone. So it really shows that they're expanding in numbers pretty quickly. So this map here shows their distribution, pretty much every report that we've had since 2015 in this area. So they're really concentrated around the Rotunda area, South Englewood, and then there's a few other small HOA communities in here as well. And a number of juveniles and hatchlings have been reported, so that does indicate that the population is breeding and established. So in 2024, FWC hired two part-time Python technicians. They do about 3 surveys per week um, in this Charlotte County area. So among those 51 captures all time, 11 of those captures were made by our technicians doing their survey. So that's a pretty significant amount of the numbers. This is Freddie David and Audrey Sheen. Those are our two technicians. And so they're really doing a great job out there. Unfortunately, Burmese pythons have a really low detectability rate. That pretty much the only method of actually capturing them is to hand capture them when in the moment that when they're observed. Um, so it takes a lot of patience to and a lot of surveying hours to actually being able to find them. But it is really exciting for them to be able to find and remove a python from the wild when they do show up. And then in addition to that, we're also some potential for the future expansion of our Python contractor program, which has been successful in uh, getting the number of captures increase in the South Florida region. So we're hoping to expand that to Charlotte County as well. Okay, so moving on to another interesting EDRR, the mongoose. So we've recently had some mongoose sightings, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. So the mongoose family, there's 34 different species. They're native to Africa and Asia. The one that we're most concerned with is the small Indian mongoose. They're invasive in the Caribbean, Hawaii, and also the Fijian Islands. In all three of those regions where they are established, the mode of introduction was they were intentionally introduced in the late 1800s by the sugarcane industry in an attempt to control rats in their sugarcane plantations. Um, Sometimes it is referred to as biocontrol gone wrong. In the scientific community, they don't like to refer to this as biocontrol because it wasn't, there was no real scientific process of review prior to the introduction. It was more of a rogue effort by the sugarcane industry, uh, to try and control the rats. But unfortunately, it didn't work very well because the rats are mostly nocturnal, and the mongoose is active in the daytime. But they are blamed for the extinction of a number of bird species where they have become invasive. So they're opportunistic feeders. They'll eat many things, including birds, small mammals, reptiles, and also even vegetation. um, some people, when we talk about mongoose in Florida, we often get comments. If mongoose were to establish themselves in Florida, would they do anything to control the invasive Burmese pythons? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is probably not. If anything, they would probably be detrimental to the smaller native snakes. But these animals, the mongoose is about similar in size to a squirrel. So if you can imagine, they would most likely be prey to the something large like a Burmese python. But since 2016, there were 5 reported incidents of mongoose in Florida, separate incidents, and that resulted in 6 captures of mongoose. 2 of those incidents resulted in actually 2 captures of mongoose. This photo here on the right is a mongoose that was caught by Disney in Orlando. Um, it was a mongoose that had hitchhiked into a shipping container from the Caribbean. So that's usually their mode of entry when they do appear in Florida. Usually they're um, transporting themselves onto a shipping container from the Caribbean where they are established. Um, so, like I mentioned, there was a recent sighting that was in the Jupiter area earlier in the year, from about April through May. So this is you can see this is the Jupiter area. So we're looking at kind of this area right here near the Loxahatchee River. So this is a zoom in on that. There's been several different sightings here. So the first sighting here was on April 1st. It was again right here off the Loxahatchee River Road. It was This sighting was on April 1st, but it was initially reported to us on April 6th. Um, the report that we received actually came in through the weasels at myfwc.com, which is kind of a hotline email that we encourage anyone to report native weasel species in Florida, which are kind of rare. And so that for that reason, they want to try and find out where the distribution of the native weasels are. Florida has a native long-tailed weasel and also a subspecies of the American mink. But there are no native species in this Jupiter area, which was one of the reasons that it raised concern. And then also the appearance of it here in these photos look more like a mongoose. So there was a large trapping response to this sighting. We also informed local animal interest groups, and we had some targeted social media posts asking anyone in the public to report mongoose sightings if they see them. Um, then we shortly after, well, a few weeks after that, we had a second report, and this was to the south of the Loxahatchee River, um, about 1.3 miles to the south of the first observation. We received these photos here, so they're a little bit blurry. It's hard to kind of see exactly what this is. The caller claimed to have seen river otters before, and he's claimed were distinctly different from river otters. He believed there were 2 animals present, and so we had the traps moved to this new location and also had some trail cameras set up as well. And then, in addition, a third potential mongoose was seen on May 1st, back closer to the first location. Um, there was no photo with that observation, but nonetheless, we did set out traps and trail cameras. And then, fourth potential sighting, also in a similar location, was made by our own biologist who was canvassing the area, and she believed she saw the mongoose in person. Unfortunately, the homeowners at these locations shortly after no longer wanted us to trap at their locations, so we had to remove the traps. Um, but the USDA did also trap at a separate natural area along this area circled in pink. It looked like a pretty suitable habitat for mongoose, and they got permission. Unfortunately, no mongoose were trapped through this effort, and since May, we have not seen any more sightings. But we do encourage anyone that hears of any mongoose sightings to promptly call our I've Got One hotline. Okay, so moving on to monitor lizards. So it's another category of high priority species for us to respond to, or group of species, actually. There's 94 species in the genus Varanus, and their native range is quite vast. It includes Asia, Australia, and also Africa. They're mostly all carnivorous, so uh, they only eat animals in general, and for that reason, they're a threat to our native animals. Um, some species are semi-aquatic, and some grow to be quite large, so that also puts them in a higher risk category uh, with all of our waterways here in Florida. They're also very popular in the pet trade. A number of different species are commonly kept. Um, so currently, the only species of monitor that's illegal or on our prohibited species list is the Nile monitor. The rest of them are still commonly kept in the pet trade. This map here on the right shows the distribution of verified reports of monitors of any species throughout the state of Florida since 2024. As you can see, there's quite a lot of observations. There's been 184 total observations, and that includes 10 separate species that were observed uh, in the total of these purple dots here. But a lot of these reports consist of the Nile monitors, which I'll talk about briefly in the near future. Here, we do have established populations of Nile monitors in this area of Cape Coral, and then also farther east in the Wellington area. But as you can see, there's quite a large distribution of other species throughout the state. And these are all we presume to be pet releases or escapes. There are no other established populations of monitors that we know of. So going into a little bit more detail about the Nile monitor. So they're like I mentioned, like all other species of almost all other species of monitor, they're carnivorous. They have a varied diet of crabs, snails, insects, fish, lizards, snakes, birds, pretty much anything that they can find. Uh, there's, as I mentioned, two established populations in Florida. The first one was established in around the year 1990 in Cape Coral in Southwest Florida here. And then more recently in the 2010s, a new population in the Wellington area. And along with tegus, they are on our prohibited species list as of 2021. So it's uh, after that year, it's prohibited to keep a Nile monitor as a pet unless they were grandfathered in before that year, in which they would have had to have a permit and a pit tag. So Oh, so in this area of Cape Coral, we have the city of Cape Coral actually responds to the reports of Nile monitors in this area. They've caught quite a few over the years, and they're really great at actively trapping them. Um, in Wellington area on the east coast of Florida, we've there's several uh, agencies, including FWC and some of our partners, that have been trapping and also trying to shoot and humanely kill the monitors in this area. Um, from these maps here, you can kind of see where they are. So this is the Wellington area. These are the observations since 2024. Um, Prior to this, we've had a lot more observations pretty much along the canal that runs along this turnpike here, as well as the Southern Boulevard. There's a canal that runs along there. We've had a number of observations and removals. But it seems like more recently they're kind of confined to this community in particular, which is an HOA. And so we have a lot of interest in trying to respond to these reports here. So you can see it's a really perfect habitat for Nile monitors with all these artificial waterways here. So I'll just kind of briefly go over some of the more recent unique monitor lizard responses that we had from this year. So in February, we had a water monitor, the Asian water monitor that was captured. This was one that we were really, it took us about 6 months of response before we actually got it captured. We had several different responses with trapping efforts. Eventually, it was trapped by a golf club, the management of a golf club down there, and it was rehomed. In March, we had a clouded monitor. The one here in the top right photo that was captured in someone's backyard. It died shortly after it was captured. And then this picture here in the bottom is a black-throated monitor that was captured in mid-March in Hollywood, Florida, and that was also rehomed. In April, we had a black-throated monitor that was found living in the hollow of a tree. Our captive wildlife law enforcement was able to capture that and return it to its original owner. In May, we had this lace monitor here. It's a very unique looking monitor species in Zephyr Hills. It was reported in a tree in someone's backyard. Our captive wildlife responded to that one, but unfortunately, the lizard was not caught and hasn't been seen since. And then most recently, here just a little bit ago, we had a black morph of an Asian water monitor that was captured in the parking lot of an apartment complex, and that was also able to be rehomed. So you can see quite a lot of diversity with the monitors that are these are all presumed to be ones that were either pet escapes or releases. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how they got out, but they're not established in Florida yet. In addition, we've had a kind of an uptick in some exotic bird reports. I wanted to include a slide about that here. It seems like over the past year or two in particular, we've had some really interesting exotic bird species reported to our hotline. Everything from toucans, we had a magpie jay, several hornbills that were reported, and then this interesting red-crested Turaco bird in Orlando. These are all the reports just from this year alone. So yeah, Florida is a really great place to raise exotic birds because of the climate, and for that reason, a lot of people keep them in outdoor aviaries. But unfortunately, as we can see here, from time to time, they do escape, and we've had a number of them reported to our hotline. Unfortunately, it's really hard to respond to birds that are escaped. It's really difficult to capture them. Um, so generally, with these reports, we will refer them to captive wildlife to see if anyone, if they receive any reports of them missing. But otherwise, it's pretty difficult to actually retrieve these. And this slide here kind of summarizes a few other interesting EDRRs that we had this year. We had this interesting bite-shear fish come up in Seminole, Florida. The person who reported this thought it was a snakehead, which would be an area where they're not established. But in fact, it's a bite-shear, which is a predatory fish that's somewhat commonly kept in the pet trade, but they can grow to be quite large. We've had this porcupine in Dade County that was rehomed. Um, we have quite a number of boas that are reported to our hotline. That's one of our higher priority species to respond to. The boa constrictor is currently legal to be kept as a pet in Florida, and it's one of the more common species that um, we get reports of pet escapes. We've also had this interesting black beauty rat snake that showed up in Coconut Creek, Florida, and that was also rehomed. So yeah, I mentioned a few times about pets that were rehomed. So generally, our protocol is if we get something that we know is or we suspect is a pet, instead of humanely killing it, we'll try to have it rehomed. Um, Oftentimes, the person that responds to it, some will rehome it, or sometimes the neighbor of the caller can rehome it. But in other cases, if people don't want it, we also have an exotic pet amnesty program. And this is open to really anyone in the public that has any kind of unwanted animal. We pretty much connect people that are looking to rehome an animal to people that are willing to adopt an animal. So it's we get quite a lot of responses coming through this program, and it's free and open to anyone in the public, like I mentioned. Um, so this, yeah, I'm going to kind of conclude this presentation here with. So this is a slide about our I've Got One hotline. So we have both a hotline phone number and also an app. We encourage anyone to report any of these high priority species that we covered today by calling our actual hotline via phone. But yeah, we always ask people if they're able to take a photo. That really helps in identifying and confirming what it is, and also a location and a date that they observed it. Um, and then I'm going to conclude with this slide here. If y'all know of anyone that's interested in becoming an early detection rapid response volunteer, we're always looking for new people. Anyone who has a basic knowledge of herpetology and an interest in removing invasive animals is encouraged to sign up. To do so, just feel free to contact me at my phone number or email there below. And yeah, that pretty much concludes my presentation here. I will take any questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, David. I don't see anything in the chat. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or however you'd like to raise your hand, what have you. So, David, I did have a quick question for you. I kind of I got distracted. Um, is that mongoose still uh on the at large, I guess is the best way to put it in
Yeah, we
Jupiter?
presumably we haven't seen any reports of it since May. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't. It's we really don't know where it is. If it's
Yeah,
one or it could be more than one. Um, yeah, but we do encourage anyone that if y'all hear of anything, even if it's just something without a photo, we're still interested in, um, you know, uh, receiving that report and
sure.
responding to it, especially if we have any kind of photo or any evidence.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, probably one of the more significant things that could pop up in Florida here to respond to.
Cool. Yeah, we just got a question in the chat from Scott, asking if there are any trainings planned for folks who are interested in EDRR responses in the future.
Um, so when we sign up, have people sign up for EDRR responses, it's pretty much an ongoing thing. Anyone can sign up at any time. Um, we kind of prefer like if people have some kind of knowledge of reptiles, especially if they have a knowledge of trapping or handling reptiles. Um, but yeah, we get kind of a range of folks that are interested. Uh, we can kind of tailor, any kind of training, based on their experience level. We do have a few general procedures that we go through. But if we need any kind of specific training, we're more than happy to help out with training anyone. And at this time, we don't have any specific organized training. But if we ever get like a lot of folks that want to sign up all at the same time, then we can definitely arrange for that.
Yeah, yeah. I think the only other program that I know of that you all kind of host and put on as a sort of training is the Python Patrol training, which
Yeah, so that's
I have a little plug for in our calendar.
yeah, that's one of the things that we want our EDRR volunteers to have a look at before they start, and we also have some trapping guidance as well, and a few other things to look over.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I feel like a lot of EDR response is really based on what species you're going after anyways. So doing a generalized training would be kind of a challenge, perhaps. Cool. Any other questions for David before I continue on with some of our CISMA updates? And I'm sure if you think of questions later on,
yeah, feel free
David's
to.
email. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, David. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing all that
yeah,
information.
yeah,
Definitely
thanks for
interested.
having me.
The birds have been wild. I
Yeah,
have been
yeah,
surprised by the diversity of things that have popped up lately. But yeah, good work. And thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and
thank you.
share my screen. Alrighty. Oh, hang on. There we go. Alrighty. So I have a couple updates. The first of which is just reminding you all that we are in the middle of our Ardesia agents, Quill Ardesia reporting period. So if you have seen Core Lardesia, we are encouraging you to report it through EdMaps. This is an ongoing campaign that we are carrying on through the end of July, with the explicit goal of trying to demonstrate need for additional biocontrol research for this rather annoying plant. It is extremely difficult to manage. Unfortunately, I think it's also so ubiquitous in the landscape that a lot of people have just kind of given up reporting it because they're so used to it. So I'm really encouraging everyone, if you see Coral Artesia, to go ahead and report it. And we're going to take all those observations that were submitted during this reporting period and tie it with a letter of deed for biocontrol research that's coming out of the First Coast Invasive Working Group, CISMA, in Jacksonville. So please participate. If you do submit records of Coral Ardesia, the top reporters will receive gold, silver, and bronze little badges on their EdMaps accounts to demonstrate that they have submitted multiple observations. So, like I said, this ends the end of July. So before then, get your observations in. Also have a handful of things coming up on the calendar. First thing, like I mentioned, is the plug for the Python Patrol. So that's every third Thursday of the month from 7 to 8 p.m. And you can get the registration link and the contact email on the FIS calendar there. Also, every first Friday, we have First Friday with the Florida First Detector webinar series. I am remiss that I didn't pull the title of their upcoming presentation, but you can check out again the calendar to find the link to that series. I should mention also scan the QR code on the right-hand side and you'll go to the calendar where all these links are. I realize that having them as links in the presentation is not very helpful. Um, July 7th, Central Florida CISMA has their steering committee meeting. July 8th, Osceola CISMA has theirs. July 9th is an event that I want to draw some folks' attention to, especially if you're in the Panhandle area. We have Merdania. Merdania Kaisak is marsh dewflower. This is a uh, s- relatively newish species that is being put on our radar. We are having a work day out of Quincy to do some removal as well as training how to identify this species. It's a little bit tricky to identify. If you're in the area and you're interested in going to this event, please go ahead and email Deb. Her email is there, and likewise, there is a plug on the calendar if you want to go through that avenue. July 15th, we have the North Central Florida CISMA has their monthly meeting, and then July 22nd, I will see you back here for our July call, our July, yeah, monthly CISMA call. And that call will be on decontamination and secondary spread. So we'll be talking about the importance of sanitation and keeping your equipment clean in the context of preventing the spread of invasive species. That'll be with Taylor Clark. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the call, we are getting towards the end of our 2026 series. So if you are thinking of topics that you'd like to see covered, or updates on topics that we've covered in the past or whatever, please reach out and let me know, and we can start to put together some plans for our 2027 series. I think that is yep, that's it. That's all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming out and for participating. Thank you, David, also for giving us all these updates. I know a lot of the CISMAs are thinking about putting together their animal EDR lists in the coming years or so. So this was a very prescient topic. With that, I will wrap this up. I'm going to end the recording, and I hope to see you all next month.